because it's not something that's talked about. So I always said anything that has to do with health in general, and particularly women's health, women should be out there and should be talking about it openly. So when I got diagnosed with cancer, I called up my husband and I said, okay, now it's time to practice what I preach. Practice what I preach. And the whole way home, I said to myself, and out loud actually, I have breast cancer, I have breast cancer, I have breast cancer. To get used to be able to say it, I have breast cancer. Now I did learn something. Eventually I actually became very comfortable saying to somebody, I have breast cancer, I can't do this, I have to go to chemotherapy. But I found that if somebody doesn't know, which is why I gave you that little bit of an introduction, lead-in time beforehand, and you say to them, hey, I have breast cancer, then that's a pretty good conversation stopper. And I'm going to talk about that on a blog in a second. It freaks people out. So, you try to gently, slowly introduce. But again, the same thing. Pretty much they say, you're okay with it, I'm okay with it, we're okay with it, that's the way it is. That's part of the thing. I started blogging as a way, it started as a way to, like I said, to share information. And it evolved over time. I found myself writing more and more about my life in general, about parenting issues, about the things that really matter to me, about Israel, not so much politics, but about life here. Whereas today, if you would have asked me then what I started my blog for, I might have said I'm writing a cancer blog. Today I would say I'm writing a mommy blog about a mother who happens to have cancer and what it's like to live with cancer. What was I going to say? Openness. One of the things that I found is that people deal very differently with adversity. So by being open and talking to people about cancer, I'm going to tell you about two different periods. The first time when I had cancer and I was very open, it ended up being, first of all, I felt I should be open because someone else's openness allowed me to check myself and find cancer and get it and find it very early. But it also, what it did was, you have to make decisions about what kind of treatment you want, what kind of surgeries you want, all sorts of things. And by being open about it, even though my motivation was outward, my motivation was so that I could help people, so that I would encourage other people to do early detection. What it ended up being was everybody knew someone who had breast cancer. So they said, do you want to talk to this person? Do you want to talk to that person? So for me, it was very embracing. I became part of this community of breast cancer survivors. People were extremely generous with me, sharing their stories. Hearing what worked for them helped me to figure out what worked for me. You have to make these decisions. Do you want to, about which surgeries, and your doctor says, well, only you can know, here's the line, only you can know how important your breasts are to you. Well, until 5 minutes ago, I was attached to them, right? I thought they were pretty important. Not only that, one of the things that I do is I'm a La Leche League leader. I'm a breastfeeding counselor. So I spend a tremendous amount of my time counseling mothers about breastfeeding. For me, breasts are the symbol of motherhood and something that I talk about in terms of relationship with children and nurturing all the time. So, how am I supposed to figure out now, and not in the next 5 years, take your time, work it out. Now, figure it out because we're scheduling surgery in a month, right? So talking with all these other women and their generosity also in sharing their stories allowed me to say, hey, what that person says? That rings true for me. What that woman says, I'm not like that. And slowly, from talking to all the women and gleaning, this is the same with me. This is different for me. This works for me. That works for me. I was able to figure out where I'm at. What's the right decision for me to make, for myself, for my family. So that was one very important thing that came out of being open about my health situation that I hadn't expected. Now what happened is the second time, the same thing happened. People, you have breast cancer? I know this person with breast cancer. I know that person with breast cancer. So the second time around, it wasn't common. Today, early detection, thank God, is so developed. There's so many women who are being diagnosed early with breast cancer and treated with breast cancer, and thank God, a year and a half later, they're done with breast cancer, and they get on with their lives, and it, except for checkups, it really doesn't have a long long-term effect on them. And it took people, took my friends, took me a little bit of time to figure out the second time around, hey, that's not what's going on here. And in the beginning, it's a very interesting thing. My background is in education. In the beginning, I almost felt like I now had this new job. No one was paying me, but I had this new job. My new job was educating the world about what it's like to have breast cancer, what it means to have metastasis, how, no, it's not the same thing as having regular breast cancer. No, I don't finish treatments in 6 months. No, you don't have to get all droopy-eyed on me. Really, I'm fine. And that was also a thing of balance, of figuring out when you want to talk about it, how much you want to talk about it, how much you want to be the educator for the world, and how much you want to just, okay, here it is, it's there, next. What else are we doing? I want to share with you just one post before, I want to share with you something about, here we go, 1 second. Okay. About dealing with it. So one of the things that's a challenge for me in particular is my kids. How do I present the cancer thing in a way that's not scary for them? How do we make it a part of their lives? I told you about my eldest daughter. Oh, I want to just follow up on that for a second. So we moved about the same time that I was diagnosed. So at one point, my eldest daughter says to me, she says, these girls here that she's friends with, they're not really my friends. I said, what do you mean they're not really your friends? She says, well, they don't really know me. I said, what do you mean they don't really know you? You've been here for, I don't remember what we were, I guess, 2 years, 2.5 years. You're friends, you do things together. I didn't know where she was getting at until she says, well, they don't know you have cancer. Right? That was the prelude to what we said before. And I said, well, you want to tell them? No, of course she doesn't want to tell them because she doesn't want them to feel bad for her. But she doesn't want to tell them. She doesn't want them to feel bad about her. But they can't know her till they know this huge thing that's going on in her life. So, we left it open. And I said, you'll decide what's right for you. If you feel like sharing it, you'll share it. You don't feel like sharing it, you don't feel like sharing it. I don't know, 4 months later, 6 months later, I see her and she's very carefree in a discussion that we're having about the kids in her youth group. And I said, so, what's going on? I said, did you tell them, or what happened? What changed for you? She says, I realize lots of people have things that other people don't know about them. Nobody knows everything about somebody else. So they don't know this thing about me. That's okay. And we go on. Fast forward another 6 months. We're talking about something, and she mentions about so-and-so, and she mentions about cancer, and I turned to her and I said, wait, I thought you weren't telling people, about the cancer thing. And she says, oh, it came up. And that's when I knew that a certain level of normalcy, at least for her, had been reached. In other words, it's not something that's a boundary for her, keeping her separate from her friends. It's not something that's out there where people are feeling sorry for her. It's not something that everyone has to know, otherwise they don't know about her. But if it comes up, that's something that's part of life. That's something that she deals with. And that's the way it is. That's one of the things we have going on with us. That's my oldest. I want to share with you some things about my youngest, because my youngest has done a lot to teach me about emunah, to teach me about faith. Okay. So I mentioned to her something about, she had mentioned a mutual friend, and she said she's the same as you, and I said, actually, her cancer's a little bit different. The things that's the same is that that we both have cancer, and we're both living with cancer. It's not going away. She says, no, don't say that, said my little girl with an earnestness that was cute and, at the same time, heart-wrenching. You need to trust in God, she continued, that He can make miracles. Don't say unless, she commanded. I hadn't realized. I'm sorry, I apologized. We will have cancer until God makes a miracle. Is that better? I asked tentatively. Yes. And that was all it took. Unless her need to believe that God can make miracles. I'm going to share you one other thing, and then I'm going to take that a step further before I finish the sentence. We had, and I'm going to go down and read you from another thing. Here we go. Okay. I invited, I'm actually going to read you the whole post, this one. Okay? This is from about a year after I was diagnosed. Okay. Last year, all my kids were interested in meeting with my doctor and asking him questions. I was happy because I thought they might ask the doctor different questions than they asked me. Also, I thought that the more exposure they had to my cancer world, the less scary that world would be to them. Despite my good intentions, we were just too busy. We did not find the time to meet with the doctor until now. Well, I guess I did not have to worry too much. My kids are not scared. They are bored. I practically had to beg them to come to chemo with me. It will be a chance for us to spend some time together, I cajoled. I'll bring great games and treats. No offense, Mom, began my son, placing his hand placatingly on my shoulder. But we'd rather spend time with friends. What happened to those little kids who used to cling to me? Who said I was ready for them to grow up? Don't any of you have any questions for the doctor? I asked again, amazed at how quickly things change. I do, said my youngest daughter meekly. I wasn't sure if she was hesitating because she didn't want to go against her brother and sister, or if she didn't really have any questions but didn't want me to feel bad. It turns out she really did want to ask the doctor some questions. But I don't want to spend all day there, she added, lest I get the impression that she wanted to hang out with boring old me for the whole day. I brought my kids and my mom to chemo on the Sunday between Yom Kippur and Sukkot. I persuaded my son to tag along, thinking it would be good for my younger daughter, and maybe he might discover that he has a question or two after all. My eldest had school, so she was out of the picture for that day. The plan was for the kids to meet with the doctor sometime in the morning and then head off to their friend's home by bus. When did they become so independent? Unfortunately, I had misunderstood my doctor. Instead of being in my ward until at least 11, he was in a different ward until at least 11. And at around noon, we camped out in the hallway, hoping to catch him. Eventually, he whizzed by in passing. He called out 1:30 the earliest. That was too late. My kids were already anxious to be on their way to their friends. My charm had clearly reached its limit. At 1:30, they left, agitated, late to their friends, and without having met the doctor. Of course, as soon as they left, the doctor whizzed by. Okay, let's go, he beckoned. I quickly called to my mom. Did they leave yet? It was not so easy to get the kids to come back. They had not even entered the elevator, but they were already out the door emotionally. My son was especially agitated at being called back. I promised that I would make it all right, not knowing how I would do that. I did not have time to help him to calm down, and A was pretty upset at well, but she was the one, A is my youngest daughter. My youngest daughter was the one with the question, but she was the one with the question, so she didn't mind coming back. And I wondered, and this is something that plays all the time when you're dealing with kids and everything, I wondered if I had made the right decision. My son waited outside the door while I went in. We sat down, leaving the door open so my son could hear and be a part of things, even if he wasn't in the room. A was sitting solemnly, not exactly pouting, but not her usual charming self. My doctor, on the other hand, was exceptionally charming. Boy, did he work his magic. Within seconds, he put my daughter at ease. The moment I saw her flash a smile,